Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we'll be talking about defense. Yep, slap the floor, stretch it out, get ready to run, do some slides, all of that good stuff. We're going to be talking about defense. We're going to be talking about the Lakers losing again to, I think Orlando's a little bit better than their record. What are they set at right now? 34-38. They have been devastated by injuries. Orlando has, and they're finally getting a little bit healthy, and they still don't have everybody. But Franz missed a big old chunk of the season. Paolo Banchero missed a big old chunk of the season. They now have both of those guys back, and wouldn't you know it, they look a lot better than they have for most of the year. But yeah, the Lakers lost to another team that sat below 500 going into the game. Oh, I have some hairs that are trying to crawl out there. That's a little weird. Might have to turn my hat around. Anyway, but yeah, the Lakers, Twitter's really angry. And I'm going to try to get my energy up to a point where it is commensurate with where I think Twitter wants it to be. So I'm going to hit this swish button, do a line of coke, and see if I can just scream into the mic loud enough to either go viral or for you guys to get off my back for saying it's a little tough to beat anybody when they shoot way outside their norm from three-point range. So here it goes. I'm going to hit the swish button. You guys can't quite see it, but like right off camera over here, there's an Tony Montana mountain of cocaine that I'm just going to stuff my face into. Come on back and scream about the Lakers. We'll see how well you guys like that. Whoa! No, I can't do it. I can't do it. But the final in Orlando was 118-106. The Lakers fall to 23-28 43-28 on the season. They are 15-19 away from LA. That is a little concerning. That does make me nervous a little bit. I think part of that can be explained away by how reliant the Lakers on on three-point shooting, and the discrepancy that you see in shooters or role players that shoot from three-point range. I think you might see some of that there. Some of it is a little circumstantial, some loud stat noises in there mixed in as well. But I also think that this team, like I talked about this yesterday, or not yesterday. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. But I talked about this yesterday about the Lakers needing to, like, their margin for error defensively is about where their margin for error was when they had LeBron James and Anthony Davis, like, collectively. And right now Rui is clearly not moving very well. And to the one Twitter dude who's really pissed at me for pointing that out, Rui said it. He said that he's 70 to 80% of where he would like to be. That's not me noticing it. That was Rui saying it after the game when he came back. And you watch him play tonight. He played 24 minutes, shot the ball 4 times. Didn't make 4 jumpers. He shot the ball 4 times and was clearly kind of dragging that leg behind him. But so you have Ruiz, not being 100%. I think you have Luka kind of regressing to the mean defensively. There were a couple possessions today. It's really funny when somebody misses a rotation and LeBron notices it. It's really funny to see him look to see who did it. And if it's not Luka, he's like, and then if it is Luka, it's like, all right, I'll go back on offense. It's really like, I almost knocked over my wine. But like when it's not Luka, it's like where you were, and then when it's Luka, it's like fuck. Oh, you're Luka. All right, I'm gonna go over here. And it's really clear that like LeBron and Luka, like we're watching them figure out how to play basketball together and how to interact with each other. Those two guys like didn't have much of a relationship. I mean, LeBron is what 15 years older than Luka. Like they just that it's very clear that those two human beings are going through the very human process of understanding how to work together. Um, and we're seeing some of those growing pains, especially on offense. We'll talk about that here in a bit. But with this game, it's hard for me to really, really, really get upset when I'm going to pull up Orlando's stats on the year, and I'll put those over there. Orlando on the season as a team, they are averaging as a team 10.9 makes per game, and they are shooting as a team 31.1% from three-point range. That is the worst shooting team in the NBA. And then you look at and it's really clear that the Lakers, as part of their scouting, their scouting report and their strategy going into this game was like, they suck from three. Let's just wall off the paint. And then you fast forward to the game, and the shooting calmed down a little bit over the course of it, especially late. Orlando came back down to earth, and the Lakers made a mini run there. But for much of the game, Orlando was shooting like 40+% from 3-point range. That's 10 extra percent. That would make them one of the best, if not the best, off the top of my head, one of the best shooting teams in the sport. So you have a team that normally has to overcome its shooting deficiency. Now that becomes a strength in their roster. This is essentially what happened with the Lakers in the bubble, where the Lakers going into the bubble or going into that finals run weren't a very good 3-point shooting team, but they were an excellent defensive team. They were huge. They got to the rim really well. They created free throws really well. And those are the things that Orlando tends to do well. And then when you have them do those things well and add on top of it the 40% 3-point shooting that we saw for much of this game, it winds up being a pretty difficult team to beat. I'm not gonna lie, I gotta look at the standings here. That'll be the next thing I pull up here. But the Orlando Magic, they're, because everybody makes it to the playoffs in the East. Yeah, they are in the 8th seed right now. So they'll play Atlanta in the first play-in game. And then the winner of that game plays the Boston Celtics in the first round. So like Orlando, I'd be kind of pissed. I'm not gonna lie. I'd be kind of pissed if I was Cleveland or Boston and I have to face an Orlando team that, if they had stayed even relatively healthy over the course of the season, they'd probably be a 4 or 5 seed, 6 at absolute worst. I really like their roster going into the season, but then KCP forgot how to shoot. Franz missed a big old chunk of the season. Banchero missed a big old chunk of the season. And even as it stands right now, they're playing without Suggs, who is I believe either out for the season or has missed a good chunk of time recently too. And yeah, like this is a team that defends its ass off. It's a big, athletic, physical team. Things that I told you guys going into this game were going to bother the Lakers. Those things it did. And then you add on top of all of that stuff, and Orlando is also making 3-pointers. Yeah, you mix all that shit in a bowl, and you make that into, you try to create a meal out of all of those factors going against the Lakers. And that's a meal that you're probably not going to like very much. This was not, I was a lot more angry about the Bulls game because I thought the Lakers clearly took that game not particularly seriously. I still think this team is moving a little slower than it needs to be defensively, and they aren't getting out and running the way that it needs to right now. But I never got the sense watching this game that the Lakers like took this team for granted. I think they got a little switchy with Franz, and I'll talk about that here in a bit. But overall, it's hard for me to scream into this microphone about this outcome here when the game plan was let them shoot threes. That game plan makes a whole bunch of sense because Orlando sucks at shooting threes. And then when they turn into the KD Warriors, you're like, well, shit. Now what? And then the Lakers defense got spread out because they were reacting to Orlando making threes. And that opens up those gaps. And then Orlando was able to get to the rim or get to the line. And then on top of it all, whenever Orlando wasn't getting to the line or to the rim or making a three-pointer, they also were rebounding. It felt like every other miss that they were shooting. And yeah, like there are some legitimate concerns. And I've talked about those concerns here with the Lakers. But I didn't think this was the game that is going to make me lose my mind over the state of the Lakers and the way that I think Lakers Twitter wants it to be. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hit this swish button, do another line or two of Coke. And then I want to talk about like, we saw this. I want to talk about the reactions to losses now compared to when the Lakers were just kind of running out the string with LeBron and AD. All right. So I noticed this the other day. The Warriors, I forget who they were playing, but they were playing that game without Steph. And I noticed that my buddy Sam and my buddy Andy were like telling Warriors fans they don't have Steph. They had just won 14 or whatever in a row. They were bound to lose eventually. Why are we so angry about this loss? And I'm starting to get those, or I'm really feeling those same vibes from, you know, the people I interact with, whether it's on Twitter, Blue Sky, or here on the show. And I'm starting to sense a little overreaction, I would say, to some of the stuff. And my theory on it, I love studying fans. The human element of all of this is really kind of interesting. But my theory on it is that when you're in a honeymoon period, people who have been in multiple relationships, or people who, multiple relationships, or people who have been in at least one or two like long-term relationships know what it's like when a honeymoon period kind of starts to you come down to earth a little bit. You start to notice some of those things that other person does. Jen probably started noticing like, damn, where did he get that like second and third chin from? And you kind of have to make a decision to make, right? Like you look at the person and you say, all right, things are starting to get a little bit more real here. That person is not covering up everything that they were working to cover up at the beginning of the relationship. This honeymoon period is starting to wear off a little bit. Those Twitter pated eyes are starting to kind of chill, and you got to make that call. Is this somebody who I want to be with through this transition from honeymoon period to actual relationship? If so, then you got to look in the mirror a little bit. You got to communicate with that person, and you got to work through some of those kinks. Or what you'll see happen with people who stay single for longer periods of time, or a longer percentage of their lifetime, they say, nah, not feeling this. I'm good. I'm gonna go start a new relationship with somebody else and go through that same cycle all over again. And it's just not really gonna pay off in the way that person would like to. Maybe you find Mr. or Mrs. Right the next honeymoon period. Maybe you make it through that transition and you communicate your way through it, and you work your way through it, and you come out on the other end with a wife or with a husband or whatever, with a partner. And that's, to me, ideal. For other people, I'm not saying that you have to get married. That's not this conversation. But what I'm noticing is that honeymoon period, we're starting to see some of those warts a little bit with Luka, right? The texts are a little annoying. The foul baiting is a little annoying. The defense, waning and waxing and waning is a little annoying as well. The makeup of this team, right? Jackson Hayes, I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, all right, the Jackson thing is kind of wearing off as well. All of it. Like, things were so great right after the trade, and now we're starting to see some of those cracks in the facade. You're seeing a little bit more of the reality set in. The Lakers weren't going to be a 72-win team. They weren't going to maintain that pace. They weren't going to maintain that defensive effort and discipline. They weren't going to maintain the shooting and production. And now it's like, all right, we got to have a conversation. We got to look at this team in a little bit more realistically, and have ourselves that talk, whether that is like us and the Lakers, which is kind of difficult to do, or us in the mirror and saying like, all right, am I going to stay bought in? Because I did sense, and I told you guys numerically, statistically, on my show, on all the other, look, I talked to basically all of the other content creators out there, and we were all just kind of saying like, holy shit, look at our numbers. Holy shit, they're back. Fans are back. And what that was people like buying into the honeymoon period. And now we're kind of seeing that honeymoon period come to a close, where you transition into, oh shit, the playoffs are right around the corner. Man, I really wish LeBron and Luka would do anything at all together on offense. Hey, where did the organized offense go? And those cracks in the facade are starting to bug us a little more. And to some, it's like, oh no. And this is, I think, what I'm sensing in that frustration, the overreaction that I'm sensing. And I think what Sam and Andy were experiencing with the Warriors too was like, oh no, that didn't fix everything. Shit. Damn, I'm bought in though. What do we got to do to feel that again? Right? Like that's the next phase after the honeymoon period wanes and you stay in that relationship, is like, all right, how do we get back to that? That was fun. That feeling where you touch your, you put your arm around that significant other, or you're driving in the car and you touch her thigh or their thigh or whatever. And you're like, damn, that feels kind of nice. And that, or if you're not driving the car and the person who is driving the car touches your thigh, and you're like, damn, that feels nice. And then like a few weeks go by and you don't really notice that as much. That becomes kind of the status quo. That becomes the new modus operandi. And you're like, man, I really wish I would notice that again. Or like somebody the first time, and this is something that like I'm 21 years into my relationship with Jen, and I try, like, you got to work. You got to work your ass off at keeping things fresh. I do a whole bunch of cooking. I've really taken it upon myself to be really good at managing the lawn and the way that the house looks on the outside. But every so often, I also got to remind myself, oh yeah, that's right. She really cares about how the house looks on the inside too. And I can't grow so like comfortable with, oh no, she's got the inside, I got the outside. That's not how it's going to work. And that's what the Lakers are now going to have to figure out. How do we get back to that? How do we get back to a couple weeks ago when everybody was healthy and the Lakers, every time you turn on the Lakers, it felt like you were guaranteed to watch a win. How do we get back to that? Right. Let's talk about how you get back to that. Damn, I landed that plane. Woo, boy. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about how we get back to that. How do the Lakers get back to what we were watching before? First and foremost, it's worth asking, can they? Was that real? Was that defense actually as good as it was performing before? Probably not. Just like in every honeymoon period, you are never the person you are the first few weeks of a relationship. That shit wears out. And then it's just a matter of like seeing how high up that ladder you're willing to climb again. It's just being real. And so, like, for the Lakers defensively, where do they need to get to defensively so that their offense can kind of carry them from there on out? Or, hey, man, are you going to start doing anything organized on offense? Because I'm pretty sick of watching the matchup hunting from the very beginning of the game all the way through the entirety of the game. Like, just because you get Luka and you get LeBron and you have Austin out there doesn't mean that like you get to take the night off, Greg St. Jean. But so the Lakers are going to have to defensively, that is, they're going to have to really commit to the physicality that they were playing with on the perimeter, to knock people off of their lines on their way into the paint. I think what the Lakers had essentially decided to do over these last couple games is it's the wall that the French built in World War II. We'll just build a crazy strong wall, and that's all we're going to need. Like, it'll be a very stationary thing, and that's all we're going to need. And then what teams kind of figured out, and what the Germans figured out in World War II was, oh, okay, well, we'll just lighten our tanks. We'll lighten our attack. We'll be more mobile, and we'll mold that defense. We'll bend it to our will, whether that's through, in this case, tonight, overwhelming shooting, or an athletic advantage, quickness advantages, the pick and roll, dribble handoff stuff. Like, teams have figured out, like, we have to get the Lakers out of their wall, and we have to then really attack them once that fortification, shifts just a little bit. And I think what the Lakers need to get back to doing was not just kind of focusing on just building that wall, but I think what they really need to focus on doing is being more physical right when teams cross half court. Go back and watch that game against the Denver Nuggets where the Lakers beat them by like 30. And it wasn't just Jokic that wasn't allowed to go anywhere comfortably. Nobody was allowed to go anywhere on their terms. Everybody was getting bumped. Everybody, like, that was the thing that, like, talking to people around the league, that they were kind of marveling at was like, damn, they're playing physical. Where'd that come from? It was a lot of the same guys, like Dorian, obviously not being D'Angelo Russell helps. But like everybody else outside of Luka, like they traded away the two guys who normally play like that, don't have to be told to play like that. How did the Lakers just shift their defensive identity, that defensive culture, to now everybody is just, you want to go through the paint? Boom, there's an elbow there. Oh, you want to set a screen? All right, I'm going to give you a shove. So that screen's going to be like 3 feet further, or a foot or two further away from the basket, and make your defense adjust that way. Oh, shot goes up. Boom. Right in the side, right in the gut, and then turn and get whoever needs to be walked out of the paint out of there, so that your actual rebounders can swoop in with clear runways to go get the ball and then go out and transition. And that's the other part of this that we need to, like, when we talk about, like, how do we get back to the honeymoon? The Lakers got to run more, man. Like, I was watching it tonight, and I know that they're tired, and I know that they see the finish line over there. They know how healthy they need to be when they get to that finish line. But you will not win. This Lakers team is significantly worse if they don't run. And so on those plays where the Lakers actually do get stops, if they let teams get back in transition, and that's the other thing, is I think some of these teams have recognized, oh, they are way better in transition than they are in the half court. They're still figuring things out in the half court, but in transition, the game comes kind of naturally. And I you know, if the Lakers remove from their equation the best things that they're at offensively, which is transition, and they do that to themselves, now they're making themselves a worse team. So, do I think that they're going to run to the extent that they were before? Probably not. But that actually is probably the area where they really need to refocus. If they aren't, because we're looking at a large enough sample size where this might just be the offense. It would be kind of a bummer if it was. It would be it would be pretty disappointing for JJ and the rest of the coaching staff if essentially the offense devolves because they have Luka, because they have LeBron. That would be a bit of a bummer. So if that is the offense, then you really need to get out and transition and take advantage of these defenses that are all hustling back, because when the Lakers were it's that wave, like when the Lakers were running at teams in waves and flattening out transition defenses so that now they have to sprint halfway back up the court to react to whoever is catching the ball as the trailer. Like, that was really difficult for anybody to kind of contend with, and that's just gone. We just haven't really seen it the last couple of games since LeBron came back and since Rui came back. And those are the things, like the defense, the physicality, the give a bleep, like that needs to come back, and the transition offense needs to come back. But like, as you guys see it, that third button, that third bullet point there, the offense also is pretty rudimentary. Really quickly, I'm going to see what we have here in terms of the actually, this is a good question here. So emoji asks, do you think the crazy stretch of games on top of the injuries is impacting their lack of detail and energy? Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, 6 games in 8 nights is freaking bananas. It's one thing if you have a 6 games in 8 nights thing early in the season and then you get to kind of recover, right? You because early in the season, I remember there were stretches where, like, the Lakers, not counting the fires was different, but not counting the fires, there would be stretches where the Lakers didn't play a game for like 3-4 days. And you're like, they're going to pay for this. Like, this is going to hurt them later in the year because the schedule is going to be crazy backloaded. And wouldn't you know it, on top of how backloaded it already was, on top of that, you had those fires postponed, forcing the Lakers to postpone a couple games. And now an already crowded back end of the roster is even more so to that extent. And yeah, I just think it's a tired team. It's a team that's been through a lot, right? The other thing with that honeymoon period is that moment that you recognize that the honeymoon is over. And I know that I am absolutely stretching this analogy to the brink of breaking, but when you hit that, and it's been a long time for me, but I recall enough honeymoons where that moment that you realize, like, oh man, that's not who she was this whole time. All right. That moment is one of the lower moments in your relationship, right? Where you realize, oh shit, my friends were right. She's not going to be like that forever. We're not going to have fun 5 times a night. Jeez. Okay. Well, let's see where reality sets in. Like, that's tough. That's a tough moment. And I think, for the Lakers, they went from early on in the season where they played a certain way, where D'Lo and Austin were still starting together, and they realized that's not going to cut it. We're going to see some kind of a shift here. Then Max starting, and all right, we're pretty good. We're a little bit better than that. Still kind of knowing, like, the giant pink elephant in the room, standing just off camera, was Yeah, we probably need to trade D'Lo though. And then eventually they do trade D'Lo, and you have that initial honeymoon period after you trade D'Lo and you bring in Dorian, and the defense is just, man, I loved that version of the team. Not saying I don't like this version, but I loved that version of the team where it was Austin and it was Max and it was Dorian and it was Rui and eventually, hopefully, Vando, and it was LeBron and it was AD, and it was just like a shit ton of wings just coming at you for the entire game. And it was athletic wings and it was physical wings. And you're like, huh, damn. No, 5 times a week. At no point in my life could I do 5 times a night. Even like but like earlier in the season though, like you go from the first iteration of the team, second iteration of the team, third iteration of the team, and then you get Luka, and you have another high point in the roller coaster where you're looking, and it's the highest point of this entire roller coaster where, holy shit, we're going to win a championship was probably the thoughts throughout that facility. Like, god dang, wow, look what we got. And then you hit the dip, and now you're kind of like trying to regroup and figure out where reality is actually going to reside from here on out. And it's not to say that like I like the AD LeBron version of this team any more than I like this current version of this team. I like I feel like a dad. I like both my kids a ton. No, but I loved both. Like I love that version of the team. I thought that team had real potential, especially if they made another move. I also think this team can win a championship. Like I see a lot in my mentions right now. This team isn't a contender. It's not a contender. It's not a contender. What? LeBron James is your second best player. In what world is that team not a title contender? Does it need more to go right because they didn't acquire a center before they traded for Luka? No. like does it mean that like this team is perfect? No, absolutely not. But the idea that a Luka Doncic and LeBron James team, like look at this. Vince, their wins are an outlier. They're another play-in team. The way they played for the last 5 games showed how they will close out the last 11 games, which is a play-in team. Why are we focusing on the smaller sample size? Why? Like mathematically, I'm an English major. But I feel like we should, like, the larger sample size would indicate that this team is a little bit better than a play-in team. And so, yeah, like I find myself saying this team's been through a lot. 6 games in 8 days is really tough, especially when you're shorthanded. And now even tougher, you're looking ahead at the finish line and you're like, after that, the games get even more difficult with even higher stakes. And there's probably a little bit of senioritis here where it's like, all right, come on, let's just get through this. Come on. We're right there. Like, here's another analogy. Screw it. I'm just going to throw out all the analogies today. This show in my career is in a really cool spot, like a really cool spot. We have some incredible stuff lined up that I have meetings on tomorrow and the next day and from here on out, because I'm telling you, we are on the verge of doing some really, really cool stuff. And there are times where I'm sitting here and I'm like, especially over the last few weeks while we've been lining up all these ducks. And there were times where it's like, the vision is starting to take form and you're like, all right, sim to end of season, simulate the rest of this game, because I know where this is heading. And I think this team feels a lot of the same way, where they're looking at the postseason and they're like, we have 2 of the baddest mother bleepers in the history of the sport in postseason settings. Let's just get there. Let's get there healthy. By the way, Rui, get the fuck off the court. Go rest, please. Like, please be healthy then. Because like another version of this, like if the training staff thinks that Rui is somehow not going to do any more damage by playing this thing, like, then inherently, he's also not going to do less damage by resting either. So just go rest and then get your reps at the end of the season and go into the postseason like that way. But anyway, I really sense with this team right now, they're looking ahead at this thing and they're like, I don't care. Look at the standings. You know, we beat Denver already. Houston's young. Memphis is in a tailspin. Golden State's going to be tough. There's a lot of there's a lot of potential there in the postseason for that Golden State team. Clippers are looking pretty good too. Minnesota's looking pretty good there too. But there isn't a single team in the conference right now, or even still right now, I'm like, no chance whatsoever in a series against that team. Not a single team do I feel like that against. And I guarantee you, the team that is made up of some of the most insanely competitive people on planet Earth feel the exact same way. And so they're looking ahead to the rest of the season. They're like, let's just get there. Stem to end of season. Sim to end of season, turn off injuries. Let's just get there. And I know it's frustrating. And I know that Chicago game, there was no excuse for it. That was a bad performance. This I didn't feel was as bad a performance. Even JJ saying at the beginning of the game, he thought the intensity was where it needed to be. But then it's just also tough when you look up and you're defending your asses off. And this team that is literally the worst shooting team in the entire league is shooting like the 7-second or less Suns. So, you know, that's where we stand. However, still some stuff to iron out. I haven't even talked about JJ here. Let's talk about him next. And some of the concerns there that I see the Lakers are kind of falling back into some bad habits that I think they cracked for a bit, but I need them to fully crack those habits. I didn't grab the clip of it, but to paraphrase Franz Wagner after the game, they asked the sideline reporter for the Magic's channel there on, I think it was FanDuel Network, asked Franz as he was coming off of the court, like, what did he see? What was he trying to take advantage of? And he singled out the fact that the Lakers were switching a ton. And it was just a matter of like getting the right matchup. And he had his shot going tonight. And there just wasn't much that the Lakers could really do with him now for 2 games in a row. And I was watching like specifically because I started to notice it a little bit in that Chicago game. And I thought tonight was a really, really bad example of just complete over switching. Excuse me. And then they also went zone against a team that was shooting lights out too. So like, I don't know. I thought JJ had a pretty poor coaching performance in this one. Playing now it's tough because Vando picked up 3 fouls in like 3 seconds, but Rui shouldn't be playing 24 minutes in a basketball game right now. Hayes also was in foul trouble and he hasn't looked very good here recently either. But the what I saw here from this team was like what I really liked from a couple weeks ago was the Lakers. Like, okay, they would switch. Switching was a part of their defense, but it wasn't the entirety of the defense. And I thought tonight we started to see them kind of sink back into the habits that they had earlier this season, where they were switching everything with no real point, with no real there was no benefit to switching the way that they were, especially when Orlando was basically like, put the ball in Paolo's hands, put the ball in Franz's hands, and those 2 guys were just going to go to work on whatever guy that they could get to as the mismatch. And you know, this is something that I feel like the coaching staff should be a little quicker on the uptake on, is like, oh, well, if they're just matchup hunting, then we got to make it harder for them to get to the matchup that they want. You know, fight through a couple of screens here and there, make those screens less comfortable to when they're being set. You know, force the timing, apply more ball pressure with the initial guy who you want guarding that player. Apply more ball pressure there so that the timing of the pick and roll is thrown off. those are the things that like I thought the Lakers did a pretty poor job of tonight or last night by the time you guys are listening to this in podcast form. Like those are the things that like if we want to have a basketball conversation, we can have a basketball conversation. But if we want to sit here and like if you want me to sit here and scream into the mic that I think this team sucks now, like no, I'm not going to do that. So I did think that the defense was too switchy tonight. That was a part of how soft I thought that they were playing. And then they went zone, which made them even softer. And they need to get back to that kind of punch you in the mouth, elbow you in the gut type of defense that they were playing a couple weeks ago when they were playing elite defense. I don't think they're an elite defense, to be absolutely clear. The Thunder are maybe the best modern defense I have ever seen, and I don't think they're on that level. But I do think they'll probably round out at about like a top 5 to 7 defense. And then very importantly, when that top 5 to 7 defense gets its stops, get out and bleeping run. Get out and run. And the Lakers, on the few occasions when they would, the transition game looked good, but for whatever reason, you know, and you have two guys and Luka and LeBron. Luka is very good at the hit ahead game, so he's a little different in that regard. But LeBron certainly likes to walk the ball up the court. But the Lakers are not a good enough half court offense to do that, and you know, that's part of again, figuring out like the makeup of this roster over the last couple weeks of the season. All right. I swear, Lobos, I am not drunk. This is literally my first glass of wine, and you guys can see how full it is. I have barely touched it. It's impossible to drink while I'm doing a solo show. But anyway, so let's go ahead and I see at least one super comment. So I will go here and play my favorite clip. All right. The super comment here comes from Barnes, who writes, I hate Vando at C minutes, can't roll or finish. Luka / Reeves play worse with him too. Vando next to another big so he can play on the perimeter, please. The problem there is like if he plays with another big, then the spacing is kind of thrown off, and we know how many threes that JJ wants this team taking. That's another thing too with taking as many threes as the Lakers are taking. Is those are long rebounds, and this Lakers transition defense is pretty bad. And if you shoot so many threes over the course of a game and you allow running starts for the opposing team, that puts you in spots where you now have to defend in transition, and they just don't have the natural defenders to defend in transition. I think they are very much more a collective defensive group rather than a you know, they have a whole bunch of individual defensive talent. And when you get in transition, it's just about individual transition talent or defensive talent, and the Lakers really suffer there. So all of the threes that they take, I think, put themselves in a tough spot. But I don't think the threes are going anywhere. And because I don't think the threes are going anywhere, I don't think we're going to get too much of Vando next to a center. And I think by extension in the postseason, Vando is very much one of those guys who will probably see his minutes dwindle over the course of series and maybe over the course of the playoffs. So I think now he doesn't have a very tradable contract, and his foot problems are foot and knee problems, and all of the problems that he's had the last couple of years terrify teams from trading for him. But that, I think, is the guy that the Lakers most need to upgrade from is Jared Vanderbilt. Fun player, all that stuff. Does a lot of like important things on a basketball court, but his limitations are just so stark that it's just, you know, trying to make the math work with him on a basketball court is just really difficult to do. All right. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'll pop back on here and record an episode of the Lowdown, and then, as always, split the show into its multiple parts to allow those of you who want to pick and choose what parts of the show to listen to, you guys can do that as well. And then I believe I think the Lakers play again tomorrow, right? I don't know. I'm tired. I'm like, if I'm tired, you can bet no, they do not play tomorrow. They have a back-to-back on the 26th and 27th, but they are off tomorrow, which means maybe I'll try to grab a guest and we will talk about the state of the Lakers here for that conversation. But yeah, until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying, have a great rest of your evening. Make somebody else's. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Hear that share button. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.